Boston 316 day, the Tuesday in between March Madness and the NCAA tournament, NFL free agency. This is Bag Talk brought to you by Burt Meyer Renovations. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Baseball is in spring training. The NBA is kind of starting to pick up steam post All-Star break. College basketball is heading into the only time of the year it really matters. The NFL free agency is taking the world by storm. People are handing out money left and right, even though the salary cap went down somehow. It's a great time to be a sports fan. Great time to be a sports fan. We're going to try to be back every single week now on Tuesdays. I feel like I said every single week when I did like one NFL division preview in June, the NFC West, and then I did like 1 week recap the NFL in October. I promise now I'm going to be back every week. This is actually my third time recording this. The first time I'm doing video and audio now. The first time I was doing video, the audio on the podcast was off. I got about 12 minutes in, so I'll try to bring the same energy. The second time, I only got about a minute and a half in on the video, but then I realized I had not actually hit start on the podcast after the intro song. So, third time's the charm. We'll get into it. The big story of the day, the story that I see on my Twitter a lot right now, because I'm obviously a Bengals fan. I follow a lot of people from Chicago because I live up by this area. I'm kind of in the sphere of influence of Chicago, and I follow a lot of Chicago people because I'm a Cubs fan, so it's a lot of overlap there. I have friends that are Bears fans. The Bears signed Andy Dalton, 1 year, $1 million contract. Not really anything to be super concerned about, I guess, except for the fact that maybe it means the Bears are not going to get Russell Wilson. Maybe. I don't think they're out of the sweepstakes yet. I think the Seahawks are holding out now, trying to get the best deal they can. From what I've heard, from what at least has been tweeted by Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, the Bears made a very, very hard run at Russell Wilson. The Seahawks just weren't willing to trade him at the moment. The Bears can do a lot worse than Andy Dalton. In fact, for almost the entire span of their franchise, they have done worse than Andy Dalton. If you look at Andy Dalton's entire career, from when he came to the league in 2011 to last year, that stretch, if you put that stretch up against any Bears quarterback of all time, Andy Dalton is statistically better. And he's done it. I mean, he had A.J. Green. A.J. Green's a really good wide receiver. But besides that, he's done it with decent talent. He's never had a great O-line. He had one good year with a really good defense. Andy Dalton is better than almost any quarterback the Bears can muster up. He's right now, as a washed-up Andy Dalton, he's on the level of Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. He's cheaper than Nick Foles right now by a lot. Mitch Trubisky is a free agent, so technically you don't have to pay Mitch Trubisky anything now. You can walk away from that disaster, which I don't really think was a disaster. And you can, if you trade for Russell Wilson, Andy Dalton is making no guaranteed money. You can cut bait with Andy Dalton like that. Like nothing happened. It won't affect anybody cutting Andy Dalton right now. He's been to the playoffs 5 times. Technically only played 4 games. He didn't win any of those games. He had chances in all of them. You could argue that he was the reason they didn't win any of those games. It's an argument I'd listen to because there are 3 games that stick out in my mind out of those 4 where I think he was directly the reason they lost. It was the first Texans game where he threw the interception to J.J. Watt. It was the Colts game where I don't think we had 100 yards of offense. And it's the Chargers game where he threw 3 interceptions. At home, it was 0 degrees. But he's a guy that's not going to make a ton of mistakes. He's a safe quarterback. And if you get Russell Wilson, you have a great backup for your crappy offensive line. they'll sign Emmanuel Sanders. I just don't get, of all the franchises in the NFL that can complain about getting a quarterback like Andy Dalton, the Bears are not one of them. I think if you took the NFL en masse and looked at the entire array of a franchise's quarterbacks, the entire spectrum of franchise quarterbacks of every single franchise, the Bears would have to be near the bottom of those franchises. I mean, to go Browns. The Bears would be right down there with the Browns and the Jaguars, and I mean, they don't even have one guy they can point to. At least the Bengals, you have Boomer Esiason, Ken Anderson, Carson Palmer. The Titans, you have Steve McNair and Warren Moon. The Bears just have nobody. And you complain about Andy Dalton, and I'm demanding on Twitter. I've tweeted it 25 times to different people from Chicago. I'm demanding it. Be nice to Andy. He's a good guy. He does a lot of work in the community. He gives a lot to children's charities. He's a good guy. He does not deserve to be dragged online like he's some bum, like he's a scumbag like Ben Roethlisberger, or like he's awful, like you guys are treating him like he's been to Nucci. Andy Dalton went 4-4 last year in games that he played the entire game. He really, if you want to break it down, so his record is technically 4-5 in games started. He came into the Giants game. They were down 17-14 when he came in. They ended up winning that game, so that game does not go on that record. He had a game against the Washington football team that they lost 22-3. They were down 7-3, I think, when he got cheap shotted by Jonathan Bostic. They lost that game, so that technically should not really go on his record. That happened in the second quarter. So really, when you look at it, he has a 5-4 record as a starter last year with that Cowboys team. He played better last year than Dak Prescott did, and Dak Prescott just made $200 million. So don't complain about getting Andy Dalton, especially when you've had Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, Mike Glennon, Jay Cutler, Josh McCown, Rex Grossman, Kyle Orton, Cade McNown, Chad Miller, Chris Chandler. Those type of guys, you don't get to complain about getting Andy Dalton, all right? You can be mad about not getting Russell Wilson, but don't complain about getting Andy Dalton. You're not the Packers. You're not the Vikings. You don't have a history with having quarterbacks. Don't complain about getting Andy Dalton. He's a good quarterback. He's a good guy. He's probably, if I had to rank him in quarterbacks in the NFL right now, he's probably in the 20s, I guess. But what's Mitch Trubisky? He's probably right around Mitch Trubisky's level. He's cheaper than Mitch Trubisky would be. He's better than Nick Foles is right now. So just don't complain about Andy Dalton, please. The Bengals, my team, speaking of Andy Dalton, letting Carl Lawson walk, don't love it. Defensive end, 25 years old from Auburn, was a 4th-round draft pick. He had the 3rd highest win rate on pass rushes of any player in the NFL this year, behind only T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree. You let him go and you sign Trey Hendrickson to more money, but one less year, and also it's half the guaranteed money. So it's a lateral move, I guess. I don't love it. I do love the 2 cornerbacks he signed today, Chi Awuzie and Mike Hilton. I think that bodes well. I like where the Bengals secondary is heading. I think we got to the point last year where we were so hurt that we were playing guys like LaShawn Sims, and we were playing Brandon Wilson in the secondary, which you shouldn't do. Going into this year, the secondary looks like Trey Wayans, who's a former 1st-round draft pick, Chi Awuzie, who has all the athletic skills to excel, Darius Phillips from Western Michigan, who none of you guys will know. He's a very good young cornerback. Mike Hilton, who has swagger. He was a Steelers slot cornerback this year. He's good. Jesse Bates, who everybody listens to this podcast should know. He is everybody in the NFL should know Jesse Bates. He's the best safety in the NFL. And then they have Von Bell, who gets credit for killing Juju Smith-Schuster's career, and will always have a place in my heart for that. The problem is the Bengals aren't signing O-linemen. I get it. You're not going to get O-linemen. It's whatever. They'll probably end up with some of the fourth or fifth guy on their list just because Mike Brown's a tightwad and refuses to spend money. We're just biding our time until Elizabeth Blackburn takes over. She is the savior. You have a top 5 draft pick. You can get whatever, hopefully you can get whatever O-lineman you want. Hopefully P.A. Sewell falls. I think he will. Or if you don't get Sewell, you get Rashawn Slater. I would not take a wide receiver. But, just, the moves the Bengals have made have kind of stunned me. On the level of offensive line, the guy the Bengals wanted on the offensive line going into this year, the guy I wanted on the offensive line going into this year was Joe Thuney. He's a guard and center from the New England Patriots. He was the number 1 rated offensive lineman going into this year, into this draft. He's a guy that the Bengals really wanted from the Patriots, the highest paid offensive guard in the NFL this year. I may be repeating this stuff. I had to stop. I clicked something and the video stopped, so I'm going to try to stitch that together on YouTube. Sorry if I'm repeating this part. But somehow, this guy ends up on all teams, the Kansas City Chiefs. How do the Chiefs have any sort of money to spend like this? It blows my mind. It honestly blows my mind. They give Patrick Mahomes $500 million. They're paying Tyreek Hill. They're paying Travis Kelce for the future. They're paying Chris Jones for the future. I just don't understand. The NFL salary cap continues to absolutely befuddle and amaze me. I don't get it. I don't get the NFL salary cap, how the Chiefs can pay money, how the Saints continue to give people big contracts, the Rams continue to give people big contracts. The only team in the NFL that can't seem to figure out the salary cap is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it is hilarious because they are losing everybody. We'll get to that later. So speaking of teams spending money, Joe Thuney comes from the Patriots. The Patriots don't re-sign him. However, they have all this money to hand out to everybody. And boy, do they hand out the money to everybody. First of all, they re-signed Cam Newton, which I think renders almost his entire postseason moot. Cam Newton was awful this past year. He had almost twice as many interceptions as he did touchdowns. Sure, he ran for a lot of touchdowns, but this isn't the Patriot League. You're not playing for Navy and Army. It's not going to work in the NFL. They ran Tim Tebow out of the league for that sort of offense, unfortunately. But Cam Newton runs it, and because he runs it for Bill Belichick and the Patriots, it's old-fashioned. It's novel. I mean, the Patriots can win this year with that sort of offense. No, they can't. Nobody can win with that sort of offense. If teams could win with that sort of offense, Colin Klein would have been drafted in the first round in 2013, not Johnny Manziel. If they teams could win with that sort of offense, Keenan Reynolds would be in the NFL right now. Blake Bell would be a quarterback instead of a tight end for the Cowboys. So the Patriots signed Cam Newton. That renders everything I'm going to say moot after this. I'll get to that later. They give Matt Judon from the Ravens, who's most famous for his Body by Taco Bell entrance on Sunday Night Football. They gave him 4 years, $54 million, $32 million guaranteed at signing. So he signs a contract, $32 million in the bank account, off the bat, almost immediately. Jonnu Smith, the tight end for the Titans. The Patriots have been missing a tight end really since 2 years before Gronk left. Give Jonnu Smith 4 years, $50 million, $31.2 million. So now you're up to $63.2 million, your first 2 signings, as soon as they sign the contract in those guys' bank accounts, the tight end. Then they go out today and they sign another tight end in Hunter Henry from the Los Angeles Chargers, who has been hurt on and off again the past couple years. There's a couple years ago he was a really, really good tight end out of Arkansas. I don't know if he's worth a whole bunch now. They give him 3 years, $37 million, $25 million guaranteed at signing. So now you are almost at $100 million in a defensive end and 2 tight ends. I don't know what to make of it. Is Bill Belichick going to... It feels like Bill Belichick is going to line up and run a wing T offense. Incredible to me. And people are giving the Patriots credit for this. Jalen Mills, cornerback for the Eagles, was the only decent cornerback on the Eagles, and the Eagles had the worst passing defense in the NFL last year. 4 years, $24 million, $9 million guaranteed. Nelson Aguilar, who's most